Governments deny it. Militaries deny it. Even the mainstream media denies it. But they are here, and they've been here for a very long time. The Mutual UFO Network has been on the front lines uncovering the truth since 1969, and now we're sharing that truth with you. Welcome to MUFON What's Up with your hosts, Katie Paige, Christopher DePerno, and Katie Cook, exclusively on the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. Wondering what's up? So are we.
What's up, everybody? It is Tuesday night, and you're listening to MUFON What's Up Radio, the show that says discovery starts with curiosity, and curiosity starts with MUFON, brought to you by KGRADB.com. Please go to their website and subscribe, and find us on Facebook on MUFON What's Up. I hope you all are having a great week, and you had a great weekend. As always, we are brought to you by MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, always asking that all-important question, are we alone in the universe? A quick reminder, it's not too late to register for the MUFON Symposium here in Denver. And if you can't make it in person, why not think about doing the live stream? It's a really great deal if you do the live stream. You also get 1 year of MUFON TV, and they'll send you a free Travis Walton DVD just for doing that. So it's a really good deal for $79. You can live stream the symposium, and you can watch it at your leisure. You don't have to be there right when everybody's speaking, so you can watch them whenever you want. So I think that's a really great deal. We have got a great guest for you tonight. We have Cheryl Costa, and Chris, Katie, and I just got to hang out with Cheryl out in New York. So we are so happy that she could be here with us. She's been doing a lot of traveling lately. So we snagged her up, and can't wait to, she's got a lot of new material. So I can't wait to dig into that. First, I'd like to introduce my co-host. You see her on Country Music Television, and she's into all things UFO paranormal, Katie Cook. Hi, Katie.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing all right. All right.
Nice. We're all hanging in there. We're off to a hot start this summer, aren't we?
Yeah, I know. I'm headed to Phoenix this year. I was looking at their forecast, like 109, 115. I don't know about you, but I'm not a hot weather person. Are you?
I like hot weather, but I like to keep it under triple digits. I'm not crazy.
Right. You're not,
there's hot, and then there's like deadly.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's bring in Chris DePerno, the New York State Director in ERT, and Jerry and Jenna. Hi, Jerry. Hi, Jenna. You guys staying cool?
Excuse me for a second.
Uh-oh.
No, you can't. No. Look, he wants to eat me. He wants to become a reptilian, and he wants to see if I taste good with chili powder. And I come down, humans do not taste good with chili powder. And by the way, ketchup is not tomato sauce. Good. Okay.
You're so funny, Chris.
It's crazy. He's got chili powder here. He wants to throw chili powder and have me for dessert. Because the reptilians are eating us. He says, I want to try it out. I said, you're not a reptilian. Anyways, we're going to have a great show tonight, folks. Yeah. This is going to be absolutely amazing. Cheryl Costa, who I've known for quite some time, one of the best ufologists in the world. I got to tell you, she's come up with some amazing information, and she's actually bringing some new information on the show tonight. So stay tuned, because you're going to have, she's just going to amaze you.
Excellent. Hey, Katie, what do you have to kick us off today?
Well, nothing about reptilians eating us, but I do have the meme of the week.
Get him started.
Amanda, let's throw up our meme. Oh, I thought this one was pretty cute. For those of you just listening, there's a UFO, and they're spotting looks like a little farmer down in the field there. It says, Captain, we are now in position, have been sighted, and the Earthling has us in his viewfinder. Excellent. Activate the blurry photo effect force field. Because, that always happens. Seriously, like you can't get a good picture of a UFO. I really think they have some sort of force field that they throw up. So I thought that was pretty cute.
And Bigfoot, too. Bigfoot's always blurry.
I know. I get some cloaking or something.
You got to rule out that thing that people just don't know how to work a camera or cell phone. But hey.
I am going to rule that out because I'm really good with a camera, but I've yet to get a good picture of a UFO. Now, I'm waiting on some new paranormal pops this week. I always like to show you a pop, but they are on their way to me. They're probably going to get here tomorrow. So I just missed the deadline to have it on the show. But while we wait on that, another sweet thing I found, little sweet treat. I found an amazing cookie jar that I just thought was so cute. Look at this, a little UFO cookie jar.
I love that.
I know. I thought that was just adorable. I love it. It's like a cork top UFO. So your cookies will stay fresh and be truly out of this world with a cute little cookie jar. And you can order these. This is a interesting website, sup.uk.com. I don't really know what I think about that business name, but
does anybody from England have an idea that this might be insulting? Suck the UK?
I thought that was really weird.
Listen, what do I know? But if somebody said, "Hey, go to Suck UK," and
yeah,
I'm going to put out, that would be a great housewarming gift. I'm moving next week, so I could see that on my new kitchen counter.
Okay, I know. I see your cupboards are bare.
My cupboards are bare. Getting ready to move it.
Oh my goodness. Good luck with the move, by the way. I know that's a lot.
Thank you.
And finally, since it's Pride Month, I thought I'd share this cute rainbow unicorn Believe abduction t-shirt from Hot Topic. Isn't that cute? I love that.
Cute.
I'm actually going to be back up in New York for the big Pride Parade next week. So I think I may have to get this one. And you can get that at hottopic.com. I just thought that was so cute. All right, Chris, news this week. Anything to do with reptilians eating us?
I got all kinds of news. Let's go
Okay.
for it. Okay. My first story is for Cookie. This one's for you. And I want you to guess why it's for you. NASA, Hubble Space Telescope, has gotten images of what seems to be a disaster deep in space. The image shows galaxy NGC 3718, which is said to be a highly disturbed spiral. Is there a good spiral? I don't know. According to NASA officials, which this means is disruptive formation caused by the galactic interaction with another galaxy, the NGC 3729 why can't they just name it Tom? Tom is out of control. Okay, I hear that all the time. You know, my wife is out of control. Tom is out of control. Harry's out of control.
Stop it right now. Be good.
I am being good. Has formed an S-shaped warp. This warp shows a twisting dust lane in detail as it moves through the galaxy core. The image was caught while the Hubble was looking into the galaxy's nucleus. It sounds like a perv. You ever see a guy look through your window? You use the Hubble. Anyway, however, it was challenging to see because of the massive amount of dust caused by the galactic interaction. However, it was challenging to see because of the massive amount of dust caused by the galactic. I just said that. And still, it could be seen with the use of infrared lights that can pass through dusty regions. Some of the features that were caused by the interactions are the line of reddish star formations. Furthermore, the study aims to learn how supermassive black hole masses are related to galactic bulges about the center and the star formation which takes place throughout the galaxy. Amanda, you want to roll that first video? And know
this incredible image taken from a space telescope shows a galaxy being ripped apart. The Hubble Space Telescope took the picture of this galaxy trailing stars and dust as it moved through a cluster of galaxies known as the Norma Cluster, a process called ram pressure stripping. The picture was taken in 2009 of the Great Attractor, a region in space around 200 million light-years away from Earth. It takes scientists years to study the complex images taken by the Hubble Space Telescope, which has been snapping pictures of space since it launched in 1990.
Well, there you go. So NG1758, whatever it's called, is spiraling out of control. Cookie, what do you think about this one?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having a story where you could say NASA.
I love it.
Those pictures are so beautiful, but they're so humbling when you think, oh my gosh, a galaxy being ripped apart. Like, I'm terrified of like an earthquake. Can you imagine being part of a galaxy being ripped apart.
I think that's a little more important than an earthquake.
Yeah, I can't. It kind of just boggles the mind. Like I said, I feel the main word that comes to me is just it's humbling. You know, when you think of something that massive taking place, and it makes me think of that Muse song, "Supermassive Black Hole." I don't know if you know that song. I love it. Get down, Katie. You're with me. You're
I'm just singing.
I'm an 80s kind of guy, so unless it's Creedence Clearwater Revival, I have no clue what you're talking about.
Little CCR.
All right, Katie, what do you think of this thing?
I'm just curious if the James Webb, how much clearer the images are from that. And can they, we need to talk to an astronomer, Mark, about I guess he could probably point it in certain directions, or is it on an orbit? And can they say, I want to look at this particular thing, and can they find it and get images? And I don't know how all that works. I'm not very up to speed on all that, but I just kept thinking, wow, that's a gorgeous image, and how much better we already have up there orbiting. So, yeah. Look how gorgeous that is. So I was just curious about how much clearer that's going to be on the James Webb.
So it'd be amazing to see. All right, let's get on with the second story. He's been excited about this all day. Robert Monroe claims reptilians control humans and feed on them.
Oh, no.
Not me. Robert Monroe, American writer, has passed away, gained popularity after writing a book about out-of-body experiences in which he encountered reptiles. Robert Monroe was a radio engineer for the United States, experienced a series of unusual incidents. He felt himself floating outside his body. Over the next 3 decades, Robert Monroe carefully analyzed out-of-body experiences. The main goal of his research was to collect scientific data proving the existence of an alternative reality. Live in my house, you got an alternative reality. In hopes of making an interdimensional travel more accessible, he developed a technology called hemisynchronization. This system, also known as hemisec, or whatever the hell it is, uses uses sound patterns containing binatural beats, 3-dimensional sound waves to harmonize the work of the left and right hemispheres of the brain. And people, if you're not working with a whole brain, this won't work for you. The U.S. government paid special attention to Monroe's groundbreaking discoveries, and in 1978, he was visited by the CIA, Christians in Action. High-ranking officials invited him to join a highly classified military project. They sought to use his mind-expanding practice to improve the mind control of soldiers during wartime, which would give a significant advantage over opponents. Robert Monroe agreed to collaborate with them to increase his authority in the study of out-of-body experiences. Since the participants in the experiment had to open portals to other dimensions, according to Robert Monroe, he often encountered creatures from other dimensions. This mostly common humanoids were reptiles. Because of their toothy crocodile faces, Robert Monroe and his team have been collecting data on humanoids or crocodile faces or reptiles have been eating us. Okay, they've eaten us through, I guess what they do is these vile lizards have control and enslave humanity for millennia. They exist and operate in the 4th dimension and are only visible to those people who see beyond their extremely limited spectrum of light. That's why I don't see them. I got very limited. The reptilians feed on our spiritual life force, which Monroe called the lush. I can tell you what a lush is. Give me a bottle of bourbon and you'll see the lush. Okay. These parasitic creatures see the earth as a huge farm. This elusive reptilian race sees itself as a true and supreme ruler of humanity. Amanda, throw that second video on there.
Or are there some otherworldly beings wearing human disguises living among us and plotting against us? It's one of the most popular and terrifying conspiracy theories around. Are there actually lizard people living among us and possibly secretly ruling us? The idea is simple. We're not the only intelligent life in the universe. There is a species of highly intelligent highly ambitious alien beings out there. But instead of evolving from primates like we did, it's not mammalian at all. These beings are reptilian and are believed to be either shapeshifters or masters of disguise. That allows them to take on human appearances and infiltrate human society. But we don't have to be worried about alien invasion because the invasion is supposedly already here. It was 1967, and Herbert Schirmer was a police officer in Ashland, Nebraska. The man had been having strange dreams and flashbacks, so he sought the help of a hypnotist. While under hypnosis, he recalled being abducted by aliens and taken on a UFO. His description of the aliens gained larger attention. He said they had reptilian features and more significantly reported they had a military-style emblem of a winged serpent on their chests. But it was a 1999 book that left the biggest impact. The Biggest Secret would soon become the most in-depth exploration of the lizard people theory ever published, giving these creatures a name. He claimed that they came from a distant star system called Alpha Draconis. Although they didn't stay there, they could travel across dimensions. Called the Archons or Anunnaki, they had been there on Earth for ages and had already hijacked the Earth. But they weren't the ones actually ruling the Earth. They had placed another group of genetically modified hybrid beings on the planet to rule in their place. And they had a name, the Babylonian Brotherhood. These powerful hybrids were supposedly the ones running the planet in the form of an Illuminati, and they had the ability to feed on fear and negative energy. Thus, the manipulations of the government were aimed at keeping us in a constant state of fear and led us to embrace an authoritarian global government that would end freedom of speech and elections and rule indefinitely as part of a new world order.
Now, before you say, Chris, you have lost your mind. Robert Monroe made the Monroe Institute. And for those people who know about UFOs, paranormal, and remote viewing, the Monroe Institute is one of the most highly regarded places when it comes to out-of-body experience, consciousness, and remote viewing. So there, but you know, this fight has been going on for quite some time. And I want to roll, you know, there's been a little bit of a war between the reptilians and some of the geniuses of this world. Amanda, that special tape I got. Roll it.
So let's get it on. Reptiles against the fathers of the Renaissance. We got the classical technique to kick these three-toed freaks back onto the street. I take a turtle and turn him into mincemeat. You don't really want to step to Da Vinci. I love the ladies, I like to keep it mellow. So let me pass the mic to my man Donatello.
Hard shell, but you're gross in the middle. Wouldn't want to touch you with a 6-foot chisel. Born in goop, raised in poop. I slice through a group of ninjas like fruit. Oops.
Yo, Raphael when I came to flow. Being dope on the Pope and a bone till I croak. I'm an MC sweater, but I get the feeling. I should pass it up to my man, I'm a ceiling.
Oh, Michelangelo and I'm giant. I make David, but I slay you like a lion. I'm a rap god and you can't quite touch me. This battle's your last judgment, trust me.
We drop science.
We got the mathematics.
The architects of rebirth, the rap addicts. You reach the flood, but it won't go well.
When you catch an Italian,
Boot to the half shell.
The wisdom of our master taught us not to rush to violence, but our master.
I don't think you wanna mess around and try to play. We're back in your fly behind like I'll fly away. I can be my steady rock a mic sucker. I'm a pristine, sistine nunchucker. Oh hi, I'm a cool but rude guy. Put you back in school with the tip of my two sides.
Daughter, tell me who you are again, dude, because I don't got him a lot of clue what you do.
That's because you just are too immature.
You wouldn't know genius if I'm pissing your stool.
We got the talent
and the lie and the rhyme so sweet.
We're like your NES game.
Cause we can't be beat.
Yo, go ahead and hate, we just skate on by.
You guys drum or
Oh my God. Oh, what?
Oh, God. Anyways, Cookie, so what do you think? Are we like steak tata to these people or what?
I don't know. Some people do say that the reptilians get a bad rap. I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. I'm sorry, totally losing my voice. The reptilians took it.
You'll be okay.
NASA. So, but thank you for working Bob Monroe into a story because, you know, I love the Monroe Institute and I love Bob Monroe and I love Hemi Singh to meditate. I think it's just the most amazing.
Did you know that he's the one that's spotted these reptilians?
Well, he's one of the people that has, you know, some of his books, a couple of them kind of scared me a little bit. Like you have to be careful when you go out of body. Sometimes you run into stuff you don't really want to run into. So, you know, and he made that very clear. That's what he really developed a technique where you very much protect yourself when you're going to go out of body because you don't know necessarily
I'm
what you're
scared
going to
of
run
running into people in body. let alone out. Katie, what do you think there?
I don't believe the reptilians are eating people. I just don't buy any of that. I don't know. I don't believe that reptilians are, in the White House or in our government. I don't know. But there is some truth to the fear thing. Like, what's with all the fear all the time? So maybe there's a war going on. I don't know. I just find it all like, it seems a little crazy. But I love the Ninja Turtles. I mean, who doesn't love Ninja Turtles?
Yes. Well, folks, that's the news this week.
Awesome, Chris. That's always entertaining. Always entertaining.
Good. Always good. Well, and I hope Jerry does not try to eat you in your sleep.
Thanks. He's going in his closet after this.
Speaking of potential reptilians, case of the week.
Yeah, the Queen's Jubilee. So this is not a MUFON case. I've never not done a case of the week for MUFON, but I was kind of intrigued by these videos that came out. I believe it was June 3rd. The Queen had her 70th big Jubilee celebration, and there was some videos that were out on the internet about it. What is suspicious, and maybe it's the reptilians, but they're taken down as quickly as they're coming up. So when you try and search them, you got to snag them right away. Otherwise, they disappear. So I have 3 quick videos to look at. I want to give credit to Sky News and Big Jet TV for these little video clips. But Amanda, let's roll it. This was over they had a bunch of different aircraft that flew over, and something unusual was spotted. So if we can roll the very first one, that's the first view of it.
Here they come, the red arrows in red, white and blue, filling the sky with the great salute of the 3 national colours. The Queen, Platinum Jubilee, Commander-in-Chief.
Now, did you see that thing fly through there? In one of the videos, it kind of shows it go around like this, and it splits into 2 and then 1 for a second, then back. So let's run the second one because it slows down a little bit so we can get a good look at it. Now, the more I looked into this, there was another angle that I found, and it appears to be a bird. So you have to really look carefully. Now, it's hard for me to believe it's so fast. It's not an airplane. It's not a drone, but could it be a bird? In this third footage, if you watch the tower, you'll see the thing, and then you'll see it kind of flutter down, and you can see it's a bird. So I'm curious to get your opinion on this. If we want to roll that third video, and then we'll talk about this. Did you see it? It goes pretty fast, so I don't know if we need to run it again, but you can kind of just see it come in, and then you can see that. So is that a bird? What do you guys think?
I think it's a dumbass bird that goes in the dead box. I can tell you that. Certainly, it's not going to have much offspring if it keeps going like that. I can tell you that right now. But what do I know?
It kind of looks like 2 different things to me. The first thing looks like it's going so much faster and straighter, whereas that thing looked like it didn't get quite up into the, what do you call it, trail behind the.
That's what I think too. And from the
flame,
and what from the footage I saw, that third one, it looks a little lower in elevation, like where there were birds down. And you could see when they flew over, there was a bank of trees there, like a park perhaps or something. But this other one looks like it was when the jets were up a little higher in elevation. So I don't know. I would love it if somebody would really take a hard look at this. I don't know if anybody's out there doing that, but I'm telling you, these videos just they disappear. Like within 10 minutes. I have one up and I go to search it again and they're gone. So that's a little suspicious. What's that all about? So anyway, that's my case of the week. I thought it was interesting.
That's a really good one. Amanda's making the point that it it didn't look like the colored smoke was disturbed, and that the jets would probably scare the heck out of any birds, right around there. You wouldn't think they'd want to be right there. So
yeah,
it's
maybe.
pretty wild. Bob
All right, Bob
Spearing.
Spearing,
Yeah, he
Bob
could
Spearing.
probably tell us.
Everybody said it was Bob Spearing.
Bob Spearing. Did you get video?
Yeah, actually, we got a video from Bob. He's doing a cross-country route to take his kids all over the United States, and they're actually driving throughout the United States to see some of the most greatest places in the United States. I think that's fantastic, and he's going to end up in Denver. But he did send this video. Amanda, you want to roll that?
Hi, everybody. This is Bob Spearing, Mutual's Director of Investigations on the international side. And each week, Chris allows me to bring you a video, a photo, or a drawing of something that a witness submits to the MUFON case management system. I have a video today out of Austin, Texas, taken about 2 weeks ago at night of what a woman thought might be a very large disc with 2 lights at each end of it. I'm going to play the video for you, and then we can analyze. Okay, let it roll.
So if you see those 2 dots right there, those 2 dots are each end of a very flat, thin disc. You can't see the disc from where I'm at, but those 2 dots are the 2 edges of this flying mechanism that I see. Those 2 dots are the each end of a very flat disc. Those 2 right there. And I'm here standing outside of my apartment. It's right there. That is the 2 ends. It was much closer than that, to the point I couldn't see the left dot. And I've seen it floating above this area for a while. It is like, all I can tell is it's like a black, dark disc.
Okay, initial review of this, I'm a little torn as to what it can be, but the object absolutely hovers in one spot if it is indeed one object, because if you draw a line down to the tree line, it doesn't move. So like I did several weeks ago, I went to Stellarium, which is the online planetarium software that anybody can use. You punch in your location, the time of day, the date, and you look at the direction that the witness stated they were looking at the object. And what I came up with was that she was looking at the twin stars, Pollux and Castor. And the other night, I was out on a clear night here in Pennsylvania, and I saw exactly the same 2 lights in the same part of the sky. So my assumption here is that it is the twin stars, Castor and Pollux. However, when you listen to the witness's interpretation of what she's seeing, she believes it's moving. She believes at one point the 1 light on the left went out, and she also claims that it is much closer at one point. So all we have is the witness's word to go on, along with the video that she's taking. My suggestion is that the field investigator who does investigate this thoroughly go into Stellarium, check the metadata for the video to see if it corresponds to the time and date the woman is talking about. If it doesn't, then maybe we might have something unusual, but my guess is it's going to turn out to be 2 stars in the evening sky. An IFO, Identified Flying Object. This is Bob Spearing. That's it for this week. I'd like to thank Chris DePerno for having me on, and hopefully I'll see you again next week.
Okay.
It's amazing to me how many stars can sometimes be misidentified as a UFO or UAP, especially when you're zooming in with a camera or you're staring at a celestial object for so long and it starts to look like it's changing colors. And, there's a name for that phenomenon. I forgot what it is, but you know what, Chris? Yeah.
Why would you name a star Castor and Pollux? That reminds me of colonoscopy. Doctor, I saw a polyp up there. I go, gee, what are you with these names?
It is interesting that she kept saying she was seeing a black flat disc. I mean, the brain is very powerful. Either she was seeing something. There is more to this. It wasn't just stars, or that's what the brain can do. It can start to convince you're seeing all kinds of things.
Right.
You know, if you can't fill in the gap, your brain will fill in the gap. You know, so.
Right. But everything's Venus or swamp gas.
Yeah. But we know it's not always that, and so does our guest tonight.
Right. That's a good segue into bringing our special guest on. Yeah. All right. Let's bring Cheryl in. All right. Cheryl Costa is a career data analyst. She is a 2-service military veteran, both in the United States Air Force and the Navy, and a retired professional from the aerospace industry. Cheryl is a journalist and wrote the widely popular UFO column New York Skies for the Syracuse New York Times.com. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from the State University of New York at Empire State College in entertainment, writing, and production. She was awarded the Researcher of the Year in 2018 by the International UFO Congress. And besides her statistical research, Cheryl currently hosts 2 podcasts for Casualty of Mars radio show. I think that's based out of the UK. One is Mystical Mentors and Cheryl Costa's UFOs in America. So please welcome to the show, Cheryl Costa. Welcome, Cheryl.
Hi, how are you?
And you have a friend.
Right, you just had to bring up reptilians.
Reptilians. Yeah. So they are real.
Yeah, and they love to eat, and don't ever forget not to call them for mealtime. Okay. Beyond that, she's happy,
I love it. Oh my God. Oh, see, I think they get a bad rap.
I think they do. Now, I must say, as a newspaper reporter, I interviewed at least 3 people who had contact with reptilians. Okay, and you see them on the pictures on the internet. They're always made to look like really, really muscular and mean looking, like they needed a case of prune juice in the worst way. Yeah, right there, Mr. Bourne, And the sketches I saw and the terminology these people used with me was soft-spoken, humorous, enlightened, and gentle.
Oh,
really?
Maybe we're all reptilians and we don't even know it.
Speak softly and carry a big tail.
Interesting.
Okay.
Oh,
that's awesome. Cheryl, I would really just like to start with how you got involved in this field. When you were younger, you had mentioned that you had a couple sightings. Do you want to kind of start there with all of us?
Yeah. When I was 12, it was a late August afternoon, a couple of weeks before school started, kind of thing. We were up in a place called Savona, New York. It's just a little bit west, a little bit east of Bath, New York. And we were up at an uncle's farm. We were coming down off the hill. Wet year that year. The corn was higher than our Chevy Impala. And suddenly my mother had my father pull the car off the road. It was a dirt road. And we looked out into the western sky about 4:30 in the afternoon, clear blue sky, not a cloud in the sky. And parked out there like a rock was this blue, or I should say just a big bright sphere. Give you an idea how big it was. Hold your arm out at arm's length and look at your little fingernail. That's about how big it was. And my mom sat there and said, well, at this point, 65, NASA was relatively new, so she said, it might be something NASA's doing, might be something the Air Force is doing. It might be a weather balloon, all this sort of thing. And so we got that. And then she dropped the big one on the 12-year-old and said, it might be people from another world. Mm-hmm. Okay, fine. So we got back. Dad got the car going again. We got down the bottom of the hill, turned left to go back to our hometown. And I crawled up in the back window of that Chevy Impala. I did one of these, wow, who are you? Who are you guys? I'm thinking over and over again in my head. And when this thing decided to leave, I didn't see an effect like this again until like the late 80s, early 90s with one of those Star Trek movies. Boom type of thing. Okay.
Yeah. Wow.
And changes you. You see something like that, it changes you. And so what we did, I you know, when you're a teenager, mom and dad aren't exactly the swiftest in the world, you know. So, but this was one of the few things I could still, I could talk to my mother about. And we got books at the library and magazines, you know. And so, in fact, when Von Daniken's book, Chariot of the Gods, came out, the copy we had in our house was a paperback copy. She dog-eared on the top of it. I dog-eared on the bottom, you know, that kind of thing. And we about destroyed that book. It was crazy. But that was our stuff. When I got in the service, they told us that those of us who were getting clearances, we couldn't be members of some, okay, goodness, they had a list like 150 organizations you couldn't be a member of and keep a clearance. MUFON was one of them, by the way. And, my mother actually, back in '69, when they were sending out little mimeograph letters, we're going to have formed this thing called the Mutual UFO Network. It was based out of Illinois at that time. It was a successor of the APRO organization, founded by Coral Lorenz. Okay. So there was that. Okay. So I went into service and I was serving the Air Force, and I was in Cam Ranh Bay, Vietnam in late 71. This was Christmas Eve, 1971. A friend of mine from my barracks and I were going to go down to the base chapel for midnight mass, kind of tradition. Neither one of us were really practicing Catholics, but we were going to get on to midnight mass. And we're walking down to the base chapel, facing front of the runway areas, but because it was like Christmas Eve, everything was sort of shut down, so there's no real heavy light polluting the air. And what ended up happening, we saw this streak going across the sky, and you know, both of us, jet, you know, and then stops. And I'm sitting there looking at it, and Tom looks at me and says, "Jets don't stop like that." And I looked at him and says, "And helicopters don't fly that fast." I said, "If that's what I think it is, it's going to start dancing around like a fairy. Darn if it didn't start doing that."
Wow.
Gone. Needless to say, neither one of us had our minds on midnight mass when they got to the chapel.
Yeah.
And that was my really big sighting. I think as an adult, the next big one was about a year before I started writing the column. In fact, it kind of instigated me starting the newspaper column. I was working for a different newspaper in Syracuse, and I was in the tech department. I made the plates every night. Okay, I was a tech support, and I also produced the printing plates every night. It's like a big laser printer with cookie sheet kind of things, you know. And 3:30 in the morning, I'd park the car. I'm home. The run's done. Pull the garage door down, and if it's a clear night, lots of stars, I used to stand there in the driveway. I lived on one of the hills in Syracuse and sit there and like look at the Big Dipper and the stars out that way. And I was doing my nightly standing meditation out there looking at the stars. And I started hearing this boom, 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 boom. I'm going, what is that? Humming, pulsing sound, right? And I looked above me. Remember, gazillion stars in the sky, and they're blotting out. And then I started noticing that the blot out is expanding and getting deeper, and it's triangular shape. And when it gets past me, it's like one of those models that David Marler will show you, you know, the lights on the back, the red light on the bottom, you know. This thing had to be a football field or 2 football fields long, moving along at about 40 miles an hour, just taking his time going off to the northwest. And in those days, I was paranoid to talk about it. I went inside, I sketched it in my daily journal, sketched it, wrote down every detail I could, the time and all that kind of thing, direction. And I pretty much kept it to myself. I was going to reach out to the then state director, but I pooped out. I said, I'm not going to do this, you know, and a lot of people do this. Okay. And then wouldn't you know, about a year later, I pitched a column with the Syracuse New Times. And it was very quickly the hot column at the newspaper on the online edition. And so we went from there. And that's how I got formally into the UFO community, was by being a weekly columnist writing a newspaper column about UFOs. And I wrote everything from people's stories. I interviewed people. I got invited to backyard barbecues. Of course, I would go there with a security guy to make sure it wasn't a lynch mob, you know, and or there weren't any reptilians there or something. I got there, and 9 times out of 10, it was, you know, they'd come over to me. I'd have a burger in my hand and a beer, and me and the guard would have a burger and a beer, and the matriarch or somebody would come out and say, "We want to introduce you to our Uncle Bob. He saw Foo Fighters in the Second World War," or whatever, you know. One matriarch sat me down in the parlor, opened up a family album. It had tintypes in it and things like this, going back deep into the 19th century. And she was pointing at different people and say, our family has been touched since the 1870s by these guys. Okay, so this is the kind of stuff, how I got to be a UFO columnist, and the column led to, remember, people used to say to me, "Wow, writing a newspaper column must be fun." And I said, "Yeah, it's a 1,000-word term paper every Thursday." And during the course of things, I had to have something to write about. So I started writing about sightings in specific counties or specific cities. And we started adding this stuff up. We took some former and what I'm going to call retired MUFON state directors, MUFON investigators, also retired out of it, and started showing them some of the stuff we developed just there in New York State. And they were going, "We didn't know there was a cluster there. We didn't know there was a cluster there either." Surprised the hell out of them. So this is, at this point, about 2015, Linda and I were sitting in our favorite pub over a couple of pints saying, "Wow, look at all the cool stuff we discovered," you know. And that's when Linda's, you know, she's the scientist of the two of us. I've got the top hat and the cane, the arts and entertainment degree, you know, and I'm the one who does most of the presentations, but she's the real scientific brains and held us to a scientific rigor when we started to do this. Okay. Nice. Now, my background in the Navy, I was a signals analyst. Okay. Beyond that, I can't tell you what I did, but let us just say the UFO stuff with all of our desk references and all the stuff we've written in the last 10 years was based on my skills as an analyst, analyzing unexplained unexplained stuff, and taking old school intelligence gathering skills and using modern tools to analyze them. Okay?
Right.
That's the best I can say what I did. And so that's how we got to be where we are now.
Yeah. Wow. Well, and obviously we want to talk about your books in a minute, but while this is still fresh on my brain, you mentioned how people would basically talk to you about how it's generational, you know, like, "Oh, this person in our family, you know, saw this back then." I'm wondering if you feel like it was generational for you.
You mean as an interviewer?
No, as in your multiple sightings, the way your mother said, "What if they're people from another world?" You know, the fact that you guys bonded on this. I'm wondering if she doesn't remember things that she went through when she was younger. Maybe it's generational for your family.
It is. I can't go into it deeper than that. You know, with the family, I'm disinherited and disowned as it is, you know. So,
okay.
Literally, really, honestly.
Well, that's very unfortunate. I'm sorry to hear that.
We can account for it for 3 generations. This other family can count back 4, almost 5 generations. Okay.
Wow.
So, and I've talked to other people since that time, even since I wrote the column, and had them relay that kind of information to me, that it seems to run in families. Think of it. I had to talk to a researcher who deals with medical research. And think about these guys. The ETs seem to have the ability to move temporally along the timeline. Okay, so imagine you inject something into some family's gene pool back, 200 or 300 years ago, and all you had to do was to maybe a couple of dozen families, and then move ahead in time and measure how far along it took for those genetic changes to either continue to mutate, or did the line die out, or whatever. And this made medical research sense to this guy I interviewed. So yeah, there's a reason, there's a method to the madness, as they say.
Yeah.
Cheryl, first of all, I want to thank you for your service. And
Yes.
the other thing is, during the show, I want to make sure I give a big shout out to Linda, because as you said, Linda does a tremendous amount of research. She's the hero behind the scenes for you. I've known you for years now, and I've known Linda, and I know she's so dedicated to making sure that you got all the research, right at your fingertips. So a big shout out to her. So
sure,
for sure, I'll pass that along to her. And she wanted to be here today, but she had a medical test she had to go for, so it shot that in the head.
All right, so let's get you right on the hot spot.
Sure.
Speaking of that, where is the biggest hot spot in the United States now? Where are they like flying all over the place that they need traffic lights up in the sky?
Zip code 85001.
10250. I mean, where is
that? Where is that?
Is that in Phoenix?
Downtown Phoenix.
Phoenix.
Okay.
Going there next.
Now, let's make sure we're clear about this. If we were looking at the county level, Los Angeles County, not the city. Los Angeles County is the #1 county for UFO sightings, and that's combined databases, MUFON and NUFORC, in the United States. They have more sightings there than 38 individual states by themselves. The #2 county is Maricopa County. Well, okay, not by that chart, but okay, county-wise, bear with me. The #2 county is Maricopa County, and that is essentially the Phoenix, Arizona, and regional suburbs. Okay. Now, they're the #2 county, and they have more sightings than 36 individual states. Okay. Wow. Now, we added to the database before we released the 2020 book. We spent okay, real quick story. Back in the middle of the lockdown, we said, okay, let's look ahead to our 2020 book. Let's see if we can go down to the municipal level. Okay, the local level. And we never went below the county level before. If we had taken and done it in one book, it would have been 13,000 pages and about 2 feet thick. Okay. And I mean, I'm not saying that slang, 13,000 pages. Yeah, it was about 12,700, something like that. Okay. You can't publish it and you can't bind anything over 1,000 pages. So we said, let's, if we keep this in mind, if we want to do this, let's break it up into individual state books, which I'll get to in a bit. The other thing we discovered, we knew 3.5% of the database, which is you consider I got 167,632 sightings times 0.035. That adds up to about 6,000 sighting reports that did not have the name of the city included in the record. Both MUFON and NUFORC had that kind of thing. Okay. The other one we had, 167,632 times, we discovered that 14%, 7% or 11,700 had the city, but the city was spelled wrong, had mixed case lettering, or said something like Syracuse next to Joe's gas station. It's stuff you can't sort on. Okay. So what we decided to do was take the time to go in and correct the spelling, make sure the counties are right, and do all that before we got to the 2020 book. It took 850 hours. I had to go back to doing it from the second week of August in 2020 to the first week in January 2021. I was putting in about a 35-hour week, 5 days a week doing it. It was like going back to my day job.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot.
But we got it. And then we also, while we were at the spelling and everything, we had a golden email list with us that we merged in temporarily. So we added zip code information and tightened up the county field.
Yeah. I feel your pain. I know within MUFON's Mars project, that was a team of 15 people and just going in and redacting. And I know we had very similar issues with, misspellings, or you can't read some of the handwriting, or it was just left out altogether. So you have to dig to find it and do the, and get it all. So I commend you for going in and fixing as much as you could on that. Why Phoenix? Why do you think that's the hot spot? I'll be leaving there to go see Stacy on Thursday. So I'm going to be looking.
If you could put that chart up again. Here's the goofy thing. When you get it down at the zip code level, Phoenix, and then the next one is Las Vegas, and the 1001 is in New York State, and the 91 is getting in California. It's LA. Okay, so but if you look over at the far right, for the people who call me up and say, well, we want to know where the hot zone is so we can go like do a camping trip or something. Well, this one would be in downtown Phoenix, so you probably have to rent a hotel. And they only really on a yearly basis only have about 68. This was over 1,374 over 20 years, which meant they had a maximum of about 114 per year, which worked out to maybe 5 or 6 a month. So you'd be spending $300 a night for a hotel room for a month to catch perhaps 5. But remember, that zip code is still a very big place. Would you even know to see it? That's the problem with the hotspots. Now, what we've done since then, we took another approach to looking for hotspots. That's the zip code side of it. There were these other kind of hotspots that are not like things you can predict, like a train schedule or a bus schedule. They're there every day at 9 or something like that. There's the idea of 1 day jumps. I'll give you an example. April 16th, 2008, Indiana, a state that averages 2 a week, had 25 in 1 day.
Whoa.
Sticks up like a post, but again, it's hidden in the data. Let me give you an idea how big this is. One state for 20 years, that equals 7,303 days for 20 years, and that's including leap years. Okay, if you take all 50 states for 20 years, it's 146,060 days. And we identified, and this is new data. This is like 2 weeks old tops. Okay. We identified 737 of these days that had 4 or more in 1 day.
Wow.
And they were not trend cities where something's happening there all the time. Okay. They might be places, they might be counties that have a lot, but the average day, and anybody's ever looked at the stuff in the reports, once you put it on a graph or something like that, the average, say in a day, over 20 years, 2001 to 2020, the average day is empty with onesies and twosies, sometimes a threesie, but a 4 was statistically significant. It sticks out like a sore thumb. Okay. Even in states with tons of sightings. I'll give you an example. There was a bunch of states. After you get past if you got 50 states and you rank them by the most to the least, after about the first 12, the numbers start falling off rather steeply. Okay, the combined numbers. But you get down to like number 35, which happened to be South Carolina, and suddenly there was a spike. Okay, so we came up with, just literally in the last 2 to 3 weeks, we came up with a way of looking at 20 years at a time by county, by day, by individual day. 1/1, January 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 365 days or more if it was a leap year, and be able to look down through that thing. It's a manual process at that point. Once you've generated the chart, and like put it in like Excel to look at it, and then you run the automation there. It puts a highlight on anything bigger than a 3, and it turns it red. And you go down through there, and it's mostly a sea of white with onesies and twosies. And then if you're lucky, you'll find that one day that lights up and says it's 4, or maybe as much anywhere from 4 to 12, and occasionally a 15 or 20 or type of thing. Yeah. These are one-day events that nobody's ever heard of.
Wow. Was there a day of the week that seems to pop out more than others?
No.
No.
Well, okay. Okay. I'm going to say this for a certain number of sightings. They were on July 4th or July 5th. Okay.
Fireworks.
So that's always been the argument among researchers. Do we count those ones that are on the July 4th? I mean, if you look at my yearly chart, you get looking at the noise here, and July 4th's like this on the graph. You know, do we take those seriously? Are they misidentified, or are they really real things there? There are years where 4th of July doesn't do that.
Oh, interesting.
Okay. So we've looked at one other thing we found. A number of years ago, living in Syracuse, there used to be a ball team here, a farm team called the Syracuse Chiefs. Linda and I used to love to go to ball games at night, and particularly for 4th of July, they'd do a double header and they'd have fireworks afterwards. So we were sitting there, games over with, fireworks are over with. We're sitting in our seats in the stadium, letting the traffic jam from hell get cleared out in the parking lot, right? And we're sitting there watching the grounds guys clear up the diamond. Linda glances up and says, "There's 2 fireballs up there." Now, this isn't during the fireworks. We look up there, and there are 2 fireballs sitting there. We sat there and watched them for 2 or 3 minutes, and then gone.
Maybe they just are curious. Like, what are these people? What are they? What are they doing?
I've heard other investigators tell me that they seem to like to watch our fireworks. Think of it like an anthropologist. Wow, look what the natives do every year on this kind of thing, And it's sort of like that. The impression I'm getting, and actually talking to some of the people who've touched the reptilians, and they say, a couple of them say they're equivalent to our anthropologists. So they're xenoanthropologists, sitting here studying our culture,
Could be.
Can I just say one thing before you go, Katie?
Go ahead.
I just got to say, when you went to the ball games and you had the traffic that you said, I was the one directing traffic.
That's right. You would have been.
Before you started something about the traffic, that was me and my whistle. Okay.
Oh, goodness gracious. Yes.
I just had to throw that in there.
Yeah. Well, you know how much of a clot that is. It really was nasty. Now, the funny thing was the last couple of years they had games there of that team. They've become somebody else now. Every now and then we would see people who would put drones up, but they never went more than a couple 100 feet in the air, and you could see their running lights. They had to have running lights on. Okay, so you can see them up there, and they probably were shooting video or something, right? But these were not drones. These things were way up there, and they were bright orange. And I'd seen fireballs before, and I'm going, "Oh my goodness!" They like to watch the stuff too. Who doesn't like fireworks? Come on.
That's true. It is break time, so everybody will catch you on the flip side of the break. Hang in there.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Scrolling all day, time can disappear. Wanna make it count? Why not volunteer?
Posting pics of your food, that takes up time. Time, you got time to binge all of season 9, though it got so bad.
Time, you got time. We're gonna grow back and be the same browse you had.
Just a few hours to keep families from harm. Help us end home fires with Sound the Alarm.
Volunteer for a day to install free smoke alarms in your community.
Discover the Observation Deck, a one-of-a-kind virtual event platform that takes video conferencing to the next level by using avatars to navigate a campus. There's so many areas and activities to choose from. There's a 1,000-seat auditorium, an expo hall, a nightclub, and even a beach. So come attend a conference, take a class, or hear a lecture on the incredible Observation Deck campus. Go to theobservationdk.com.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected, only at kgradb.com.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Okay, so I'm really curious, Cheryl, your background, and thank you for your service in the Air Force and the Navy. I think that would kind of give you some privy to talking to pilots and others that are in the military, men and women. Not really. I would think maybe you would hear other stories, but people are pretty tight-lipped, huh?
Yeah, very much so.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
In the Air Force, I was a telephone lineman. Okay. And when I was in Vietnam, people shoot at you on those telephone poles.
Oh,
no. But in the Air Force, no, I didn't have any access to pilots.
Okay.
And that was just the way it was. In the Navy, I was a nuclear submarine. I did have a short stint of a couple of months on a destroyer, but between schools. But I was a nuclear. When I wasn't in school, I was on nuclear submarines.
Right.
Well,
I hope with the congressional hearings, that's something that's changing, and that more men and women in the military are comfortable with coming forward,
Well, yeah. I want to make sure you know something. Let's see. Last summer, I printed out, I had 2 copies of our UFO book, the pink book. Okay. I put 2 of them on the couch. Okay. And I sat there and stared at them, and I turned around and wrote a cover letter to Senator Rubio, and this guy's name slips my mind. He was a New York State representative who was on the equivalent to Rubio on the Senate. Rubio was on the Senate Select Intel Committee, and then this New York guy was on the House Intel Select Committee. And I wrote them both a very, very short executive letter with an executive summary. Okay. And then for Rubio, I printed out, at this point, my database was pretty clean. So I printed out the UFO sightings in Florida by county, by zip code, 2001 to 2020, in every single county and zip code that had the sightings. It was an 1.5 inch thick printout.
Wow.
Had it down at the office supply store. They put a spiral binding on it for me, and we sent them this. We did the same thing with the guy from the House side, who happened to be a New York State representative, who I did the same thing for New York State. Never got a thing back from either of them. Okay. But that seems to be the track. They don't acknowledge the UFO stuff. Steve Bassett found this out when he sent every representative in the Senate and the House a copy of the citizen hearings on UFOs. Never heard peep back from anyone. Okay, now one more. So when I found out that Andre Carson, Representative Andre Carson from Indiana, was going to be heading up these things, I sent him a similar kit, and I had inside that kit was, again, almost the same cover letter except updated cover data numbers, and I gave him a summary of Indiana by county and by zip code in his state, and I gave him a printout by county, by zip code, right down to all the shapes over 20 years for every one of those categories. And then it was about 3/4 of an inch thick. It was pretty big. So he got the same information. And the letter basically said, Linda Costa and myself are the civilian experts in terms of UFO sighting statistics. Feel free to call on us.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we haven't heard beans.
Crickets.
Crickets constantly. Let me give you a high level number of what that executive summary said in the one that Carson got. Okay. UFOs in the United States, 2001 to 2020, have been reported from, there are 3,135 counties roughly. Okay. Sometimes cities combine and become a county, or sometimes two cities will combine and become one county, that type of thing. But the last numbers we had was 3,135 counties. 3,030 counties reported UFOs. That means 105 counties in the United States did not report UFOs in that 20-year period. And we have a map of that in a minute. Let me give you then there are 35,879 municipalities, licensed communities, all that kind of stuff, right? 20,348 reported UFOs. Okay. UFOs were reported. Again, this is a zip code thing. Nobody else has this data. There are 41,692 zip codes. 18,605 reported UFOs. A total of 167,632 eyewitness reports in the United States over the 20 years between 2001 and 2020. If you want to pull up that map of the United States by county, it'd be great. There, that's what the United States looks like. All the dark spots are those 105 counties that didn't report UFOs. Okay, there's another map that shows just those. You pull that up. It's the dark USA map with just the three. There you go. Okay. And there's the one by zip codes. By the way, those counties are typically counties that are they're mostly rural counties with they're I don't want to call them poverty stricken. Let's say less economically vital counties, and they have a serious lacking of broadband.
Right.
You can't report them. You can't report them if you don't have a way to report them, and broadband is the easy medium. So that's the deal there with the big numbers. At this point, I can tell you what we've discovered to be the drivers and influencers of sighting, if that's what you'd be interested in.
Okay. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, there should be a chart there with the UFO sighting drivers. Okay. Most people in the UFO community will knee-jerk and say, well, Cheryl, they're all concentrated around the big cities, they tell me. Okay. Well, yeah, that's true. But we also discovered that sightings were tempered by temperate weather. If you were up in the northern states, we'll say like New York State, most of the sightings have a quiescent amount of sightings all year long, and it spikes up, starts coming up a little bit in May, comes up a lot in June, July and August are through the roof, and then it starts ramping off into the fall, and by October, November, it's down to that quiescent amount of sightings, which are your typical dog walkers, smokers, and anybody who's outside on a smoke break at the shift at the factory, anybody who's outside in the evening. Okay. Leisure time is another driver. Now, we couldn't prove that very easily earlier, but there is a chart there. Monthly, the chart is monthly 2020 during COVID. You can put that up briefly. Okay. We measured it because I had a lot of people call me up, but George Knapp had me on back in February, had me on Coast to Coast. We were just getting ready to go into the COVID lockdown March and April. And people were calling up saying, hey, wow, you got the perfect laboratory to measure this. So this is what it looked like. And it went through the roof while we were home, all locked down. If we could go back to the drivers, please. Okay. Leisure time. Hours of darkness. Now, this is a goofy one because people say, well, wait a minute, we see lots in the daytime. Show the little graph of UFOs by hours of the day.
I know some of my best cases have been daytime sightings, but statistically, I would think they would be more at night. So I'm anxious to see this here.
Is what it looks like.
Huh.
This peak from about 1700 at night to 2400 or midnight, that's basically 5 to midnight right there, represents 75 to 80% of the sightings in a single day during that 8-hour window. Okay. The other 16 hours of the day only represent about 25, 30% of the sightings. That bump at 5 o'clock in the morning is a very common thing. We think it is people going out, dusting the snow off the car, taking the dog for a first walk, going out for that first smoke with the dog, and that kind of stuff. Okay. If you notice, there's a dip around 7 to 9 o'clock in the morning, and this is pretty consistent in most states. It's a little the peaks at 5 o'clock in the morning, that bump at 7 to 9 o'clock in the morning during morning drive time. Who can report a UFO when you're stuck in traffic? The bulk of the sightings in the evening happen between 8 o'clock and 10:30. Okay, it looks like 10 there, but basically that's it. Every state, that little peak is a little different. Sometimes it's rounded off. Sometimes it's a very narrow peak into the 8 or 10 o'clock at night window. Okay, now people were saying, well, wait a minute, how can this be? Well, there's another chart there, Cuyahoga County, Ohio. All right, now this is the information we learned by putting zip codes in here. This is Cuyahoga County in Ohio, and this is typical of what I see. The downtown Cleveland is 44101. They're at the top. It got marked in yellow. Okay, that looks like your normal big city. Got lots of sightings. Okay, and you think that's where they all are, because if you were to print dots on a map for the rest of the county, they're scattered all over the county.
Yeah.
But if you look out here between 1800 and 2300, you'll notice that the bulk of the sightings in those hours are out in the suburbs, the bedroom communities, the unincorporated communities further out in the rural villages. And they actually add up to more sightings during that window of time than what they had in the big city.
Well, so Katie Cooks is having some trouble with her audio. I know. We're trying to get it fixed, but I know she wanted to ask about, you had mentioned that shapes have seasons. Can we talk about UFO shapes?
Yeah. If we could bring up the shapes by monthly seasons chart.
Okay.
This was an eye opener for me in 21 when we started working with the 20. Okay. The greens are the minimum. Let me see what the scale here is. The green indicates the minimum numbers in a particular month for a particular shape. You got the shapes going down the left-hand side of the page there. And the yellow shows the peak months for particular shapes. Now, a lot of them are July, but you notice there's other ones that scan out into the fall months. Okay. And some of them, as you can tell, they're all over the place, particularly in their minimum months. Okay. And we didn't know this and then we actually, when we tried to look at it on a day-to-day basis, Saturday is the peak day for sightings. Okay. If you go to a couple of several of the southern states, it's Wednesdays and Thursdays. And we've loosely correlated that to Bible study night. And this was brought up by a couple of interns my wife had working for her, and she says, well, that's Bible study night, so you got to be outside. So you're coming back from Bible study, it's 9 o'clock, 9:30, you're getting in the car, hey honey, look at that, it's right. Something like that. Go ahead, next question, please.
Oh, okay. Well, here I am. I'm so thrilled about what's going on. I'm like, wait a minute, it's my turn. All right, listen, I'm going to change it up a little bit here. I want to ask you about an article you wrote in 2014 that I thought was fascinating. You talked about aliens invade a New York farm in 1880, somewhere near Hornell, New York. Do you remember that? Oh, come on, Cheryl.
They invaded?
You wrote an article about a sighting and stuff in 1880.
Do you have a title of that article? Keep glancing at something.
It's right here. Did aliens invade a New York farm in 1880? By Cheryl Costa.
Oh yeah. Okay. That had to be down. That had to be down around 2013 or 2014. I wrote that article.
Yes.
That's 10 years ago, my friend. I'm 70 years old.
I was a fascinating article. I had to ask you about it, but we'll drop that and let me ask you about this.
Please. I vaguely remember it, but I don't remember the details.
Okay. My question is to you is you saw the congressional hearing, correct?
Oh. Yeah. I told people a year ago it's going to be spooks from a dozen different agencies, and it's going to be a bunch of swaggering military pilots. And what have we seen?
We've seen nothing.
Yeah.
And I thought I call it cardboard. It's cardboard because they had two guys there that really didn't want to be there. That they had this show that video that they couldn't even control. You would think you're going up to brief Congress, you would have stills and slides and big posters of all this stuff. And the one guy, Scott Braid, turns around and says, "Well, we don't have a computer that can do this." Now you're the U.S. government and you don't have a computer that can do this.
I was telling people in advance, a couple of other programs I had been on. He said, "What are you expecting from these people?" And I said, they haven't been paying attention like we have. They probably don't have a whole heck of a lot, and they don't know about it. And if somebody asks them a really hard question about something in the past, which they did in one of these things, and the guy's going, he didn't know, and the thing that bothers me is, it was okay to ask them about all the stuff maybe the military has been exposing, but these hearings need to take on the tone of the citizen hearings we had in 2013 with Steve Bassett's people and start talking to some of us who've been doing serious research. They're acting like we don't exist.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
Well, they acted like it was a joke. Cheryl, they go up to Congress, and first of all, the one thing that absolutely amazed me, now you worked in the military, you know about technical stuff. You're going to tell me that night vision goggle, well, it took us years, but we decided that the triangle that we saw that was flashing above this ship was really a drone. Now, wait a minute. You're the U.S. Navy. Yes, you're the U.S. Navy. You don't realize there's a drone that you don't know hovering over your ship with the most sophisticated
swamp gas.
Yeah, I mean, come on now. That was just the most craziest thing a person could say to the Congress.
Okay. Back last year, they showed that infrared picture, one of those Jerry Cobell releases or something. They showed that 2019 they were infrared footage. They showed that sphere kind of like cruising around the ship. Okay. And I had a journalist from the West Coast call me up. "Hey, Cheryl, are spheres a thing?" I said, "Yeah, 17,150 of them in the last 20 years. What else would you like to know?" But I reach out to these editors at major newspapers. I give them this 2-page briefing. Crickets. They don't want to know, or somebody told them not to want to know.
I think your second part is right. I think they said to them, they don't tell them anything. Don't tell them anything, because they looked like deer in headlights when they were asked certain questions. When they were asked about the Admiral Wilson papers. Now, Admiral Wilson was the 13th director of DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency. So they should have been able to say, yeah, we're aware of who Admiral Wilson is. We're not aware of the authentic of the papers, but we will look into it. And now they got to, because the congressman put it in the record. He absolutely put the papers in the record. And that was just I don't understand how they couldn't know who Admiral Wilson was.
All right, look. 1968, Dr. Eugene Condon's report to Congress. Okay. One, he got the Air Force out of the business, which they wanted to get out of the business in the worst way. Okay. He told everybody they're not a threat to our country's security, but senior Air Force personnel neglected to tell him that they were shutting down our missile silos. During the same period, his team were evaluating whether or not these things were an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And he said, we don't need to spend any money on this. Now, wait a minute. Linda, if she was here, will tell you to get something scientifically validated, it needs to be looked at either academically, and they won't touch it unless there's money. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Government agencies, there's lots of little government agencies that do all kinds of research. And if there wasn't grant money out there, they'd probably jump on it and do the research. Mm-hmm. No. And it was career suicide. Same thing with the academics. Okay. When our pink book came out, I reached out to 13 of New York State SUNY schools and asked them if they would like a free presentation on the scale of our research work. And I reached out to the psychology department, the philosophy department, the earth sciences, and the physics department at each of those schools. You can lose the picture. And crickets.
Nothing.
I thought there was supposed to be academic curiosity here. Okay. So the bottom line on this thing was Dr. Eugene Kahn said, oh, nothing here. The newspaper took these clues, and so did the New York Times at the time. They printed huge passages of this stuff and saying, oh, there's nothing here. These aren't the droids you want. Okay. So for the last, 50 years, those of us who had anything to do with this topic were laughed at, made fun of on local television, made fun of in local papers. Kooks, nuts, and crackpots. Yeah, they're conspiracy theory. They're all conspiracy theory people. There's a lot of people in this community who have been doing serious research, and we can't even get them to look at it.
Cheryl, can I dive in here and ask you, is my mic working okay?
Yep, I can hear you. Yay.
I'm back, hopefully, for the rest of the show. You've reached out to psychology departments. I know something that we all feel strongly about is how much we need to support people that have had contact because, it's a very isolating experience. But you said you don't
get
feel
me
like
going on that one.
Well, no, I want to get going on
it.
Why?
Okay, I know where you're going with it.
Yeah, go.
Therapist friend of mine and I were talking about this at length. And when he saw my numbers, it about unscrewed his head. Okay. I mean, he was going, and his first remarks to me, he says, this can't be legit. And I said, baby, this is as legit as it gets. Okay. So we got talking about it, experiencer stuff in depth. Threw a couple, one of John Mack's books at him. Okay. Then I looked at him after he read that book. And I looked at him and I said, hey, why don't we write the New York State? And I was still in Syracuse, by the way, at the time. And I said, why don't we write the New York State Association of Social Workers and show them how big an issue this is? Because we go give them a presentation. Maybe we can get a little bit more sympathetic help by the helping professionals in the social worker community here in New York State. Rewrote them 4 times. Crickets. After the 3rd time, I called them on the phone. The person I spoke to, I had a very short little terse thing I said, and he said, wow, that sounds interesting. I said, yeah, can we talk? He says, let me talk to some people. Called her back a couple of days later. I can't talk to you. Okay, we sent them a 4th letter. Again, nothing. Remember, in John Mack's time, his own peers laughed at him. They tried to railroad him out of Harvard.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Leo Sprinkle too. He was a pioneer. We need more Dr. Leo Sprinkles.
Yeah, we need more Leo Sprinkles. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So that's where this whole situation is. So we got a situation where we can't. Now, here's what we're going to see. I wrote an essay about this a couple of years ago for the newspaper and said, when we get close to disclosure or have disclosure, suddenly all these college professors and everybody's going to come out and they're going to be all these people that denied us are going to say, oh yeah, I'm an expert. I've been with this stuff for years. You watch. It's already starting.
Cheryl, my question I have for you.
Sorry.
Hey, go for it, man. I get very emotional about this too. I got emotional when the congressman brought up Maelstrom Air Force Base, and everybody went, well, we heard about it, but we know it. Now, here's the thing, and this is my question to you. For 70 years, they haven't said the word threat. Now, every other word out of their mouth is national security and threat, okay? But they don't look at one of the biggest things that you would perceive as maybe a national security issue is shutting down 10 ICBM missiles. Why are they starting to use the word threat? And it's not just because of money. We know they can get money out of saying that, but there's got to be more to it, Cheryl. What's your opinion?
Okay. When did the Navy really start getting a lot of this activity? 2004 with the Nimitz.
Correct.
Okay. 2019, I had a chance to talk to, I was at UFO MegaCon down in Laughlin. And I got to sit down at the booth across from me. It was a whole bunch of Nimitz sailors. And I got to talk to guys that were in that radar ship in combat information. And I'm ex-combat information, so I knew the language. I sat there and we had a long talk about this. And they said their reality was rattled in combat. Okay, they were going crazy. It's like, oh my God, but they're trying to do their job, but they're saying to each other, this is real. This is real. Those guys are experiencing the real thing. Of course, when they've been told they can't say anything. So they come back and they got this tremendously big secret in themselves. They can't talk about it. And a lot of their wives said, okay, who is she? Okay, a couple of them almost lost their marriages over it.
Yeah, okay? Kevin Day had a terrible problem.
Yeah. And I talked to one of their chief petty officers about this at length, and he told me that some of the stuff some of his people under him are going through. But okay, let's talk about it from this standpoint. 2004 is when this stuff started happening in earnest. Okay, there's a couple of dozen little defense intelligence agency, little offshoots, different things like this out there. If this thing had even hinted Russian or hinted Chinese, they would have been all over it like flies on poop.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. But they didn't, because there's a stigma, So the other thing that Dr. Eugene Condon managed to do is plant that stigma deep in American consciousness, especially in the governmental ranks. It was not good for your career to bring up such silly stuff. Okay. And the only reason Navy intelligence took it on is because it was their people who were reporting this intelligence information. Thank God they did. Okay. And then there was the task force. The task force sounded like 20 guys were working on it. No, it was 2 people. And of course, all this stuff right here is 2 old ladies on a couple of pensions that are doing all this research. People keep calling me up on these shows and say, hey, Cheryl, why didn't you test it against temperature patterns of the clouds or this or earthquake patterns and things like that? It says, I don't have a staff of 19 people and a budget. That's something Rich Hoffman said. Those 2 women deserve a budget and a staff.
Absolutely. I agree with you.
But let's go back to the Navy and the military. Remember, this was a non grata topic matter for the last 50 years, and may Eugene Condon rot in hell, okay? Because the government, 50 years, that's a generation and a half. They institutionally wiped this information from the government's own knowledge. Okay, think about this. Linda's librarian. She gave me a long talk on this. Says they have wiped it out of the knowledge stream. So Maelstrom Air Force Base, these guys that were testifying were probably in diapers when that happened. And unless you're running in this community and read the stuff we read, you wouldn't know about it.
Yeah.
But even Dr. Robert Haster's stuff was stuff from the 60s and 70s. Maybe in a couple of cases, the 80s documents. And if you didn't go to a major convention like the MUFON 2017 convention in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and see Dr. Haster's stuff, you wouldn't know about it.
Yeah, let me just jump in here real quick, because I just want to say that if it seems like the congressional people don't care about the past. They're not looking at anything of the past. And if you don't look at the past, you cannot define the future. You can't look at the future and say, hey, it's not the Russians, it's not the Chinese, because they didn't have an airplane.
They've been flying circles around us since the Second World War.
Exactly. And Chinese had nothing. We had to bring them planes and pilots.
See, they're acting like this just happened. Oh my God, these things are outflying our stuff. They've been outflying our stuff since before World War II. So, but no, again, these congressmen don't have a clue to the past. They won't talk to anybody who's got historical knowledge of it. But keep in mind, it's a problem in our human species and our enlightened 20th century. 1918, Charles Fort came out with his book, The Data of the Damned. Okay. Would you believe in the 19th century, right up until probably the late Victorian age, they didn't believe that meteors were a thing. It's nonsense. Rocks falling from the sky. You're nuts.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. At the end of the 19th century, classic physicists thought they had it all figured out in terms of physics. And in the 1920s, Heisenberg and his buddies come along and give us quantum physics. Okay. This is how narrow view academia is. Politics are even worse. Okay. Now they're all talking about technology. Have you noticed that? They want to know about this technology. Right. One, there's a buck to be made in it. And two, it's going to give us an edge over somebody. Okay, that's where they're coming from. But they aren't bothering to look. And I said in my cover letter, Belinda and I put a cover letter together. If you want to truly understand this, have us come down and show you the big picture. I want to give them the same slides I gave them at Pine Bush.
Right. Yeah. Why do you think, and then I want to circle back after I ask this question, I want to circle back to the contactee and abductee kind of angle. But why do you think, the congressional hearings and the Navy, why now? Why is this happening now? Why are they coming out after all these?
We're at a tipping point with our ecology. And remember what Ray Hernandez's people and researchers shown. The ETs, they're a great bunch of people. And they told us to take care of our planet. And in our data, if you remember from Pine Bush, stuff that Tom Conwell from Troy, New York, took some of our data and figured out that a lot of the sightings were congregating around some of our worst pollution, our dead coal mines, our dead mining fields, our dead gas fields, burning coal mines, strip mine towns that are ghost towns now, all that kind of stuff, and the most polluted rivers and lakes. They're terribly interested in all of our waste zones. Okay. And they are looking at this stuff, telling abductees, take care of your planet. They're worried about us. And I think that they decided to push this issue by making such a nuisance of themselves around the military. And of course, remember the other thing Lou Alessandro told me, I've interviewed him 3 times. Okay. And what he told me was people keep asking me all the time, Cheryl, did you calculate all the statistics around all the military bases? They must be hanging out there. No, they're not. Most of those bases downgraded after the fall of the Soviet Union. Most of those bases got degraded down to Air National Guard and reserve bases. Okay, only the active bases with nuclear technology, and we're not talking reactors, we're talking weapons, are the ones that get the heavy flyovers by these guys, and the fleet, obviously, because they've got the advanced technology.
Okay, so to really understand why they're here, I've heard you say it really boils down to our consciousness. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yes. And when I remember, if you believe anything from the past, they wanted Eisenhower to give up nuclear weapons, and they said that they would share with us technical knowledge. But okay, I've always believed that the arms race by Soviet Union and America was a handshake deal, that if these people really come here, this is the predecessors in government. Okay. If we build all these missiles and they come here, we'll nuke ourselves more, but they can't they can't conquer us. That was my opinion of what they did. Okay.
That's an interesting theory.
Think about that a minute, because remember what we had a couple of these things happen before the war. We had some Foo Fighters during the war. Both sides thought it was the other side that was doing it. Okay. Then we had Roswell. By the way, Orson Welles had those poor guys that had to investigate Roswell. Realize, Orson Welles, Jesus, he scared half the country to death only 8 or 9 years ago. So, we can't do this. Okay, I'll shut up. Questions, please.
Oh, about the consciousness. Just our understanding ET, it's going to come down to our consciousness, I think. I don't think we can wait on our government to tell us, what to believe and all of that. I think we are being woken up individually, one at a time.
I can go there.
Let's go there. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Tom, okay, there's a whole consciousness component. I come from a family that has clairvoyance running down the maternal side of the family. Okay. I see the world differently than most people, and a couple of my cousins do. Okay. Take this a step further. Been a practicing card carrying Wicca priestess since, or clergy person since 1976. All right. Lived in a Buddhist monastery for 7 years in midlife. All right. Let's look at this. Tom Conwell came to me and say, I can't figure why they're out showing themselves. They've got all this fantastic cloaking technology, but they show themselves more than they should be. And I said, what happens when someone sees one? It's usually a spiritual experience, isn't it? And he said, well, yeah. And I said, okay. If they're trying to enlighten us and get those people to make their view of reality a tad more elastic, then they're going to have to show themselves, let us individually see these things, have these deep spiritual experiences, and maybe we'll start thinking spiritually and consciousness wise and things like this. And that's what it seems to be. They're trying to wake us up. I think they've given up on our government. They're harassing the snot out of them by showing their numbers. They've been always very reluctant to show their numbers. Now they're showing numbers. And what can our government do? Oh yeah, we had 100 drones floating over us 300 miles out into the ocean. Come on.
Yeah, you mentioned that it could be a spiritual awakening for abductees and contactees, but I mean, it's been my opinion and actually personal experience that it doesn't always start out that way. Can you kind of speak to that? And have you seen that pattern where it may start out as something negative and scary and then eventually turn into something positive and spiritual? Have you found that as well?
Frequently does happen. It takes time. People have to wrestle with it. Okay, you can't talk to your spouse about it half the time. You can't talk to a therapist half the time. Okay, you can't go talk to, I know clergy that have listened to a lot of these stories in confessional. Okay, I used to be on the Council of Churches in Syracuse, and I had a bunch of them inside one day, and I asked them, I know you can't tell me details, but if people have been confessing to you they saw a UFO, and he says, happens all the time.
Really?
Okay. And one Episcopalian clergy said to me, he says, you wouldn't believe how many former fighter pilots have come into confession, bared their soul because they knew I couldn't tell anybody.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Okay. So it goes deep like that.
Wow.
There was something else you said a moment ago with it. The spiritual thing. Okay. With the spiritual thing. There is a spiritual awakening going on in our culture.
Yeah.
And at the heart of it, below everything else, what people don't realize, a lot of the culture war we're going through right now in this country has its roots in this spiritual awakening that's happening within certain people. Statistically, according to two different polls, Fox Pictures in July of 2017 and Gallup poll in September 2019 said that 16.74% of people say they've seen a UFO. That didn't jive with the sighting numbers. We have since worked those numbers, especially after the Gallup poll numbers came out and confirmed what the Fox poll had. We crunched those numbers. We had to go down to the state level, adult Americans, which is what this was about, and calculate it. And it came up with a bell curve at 1, and it was 1 in about 150 people reported what they see. At the far end, it was 1 in 450 people reported what they see. And the top of the bell curve was 1 in about 250, 260 people reported what they see. Now, keep that number in your head, okay? The 250 number. Okay, so I've reported on an average about 8,500 sighted between both databases, about 8,500 per year. And that doesn't count all the mom and pop databases. It doesn't count the people who didn't report, and it doesn't count the people who only come on Facebook and share it with their friends.
Right.
Okay? Just the two databases. But I hope you've all heard of the CSU. That's Rich Hoffman's effort down in Huntsville, Alabama.
Yes.
A lot of scientific professor things coming up. I was on Dave Scott's show about 2 weeks ago with Dr. Bob Revere.
Right.
Bob Revere said that these professors were a couple of them were together, and they said they wanted to try something kind of like what me and Linda did. They took a big map of the United States and threw a couple of darts at it. Then they went to the places where the darts started. They had money to fund this thing and all this stuff. They started going there and they're interviewing people and everything like this. And some of these places places out of the way where you wouldn't think there was anything going on, they heard horrendous amounts of accounts. People started once they saw Joe and the neighbors talking about it. The other people came over and told you the numbers were getting really, really big. Okay, so let's take a number like 8,500 a year. 8,500 a year, and that's a round number. Okay, times 253. I said 1 in 254 people reports what they see. So what did the other 253 see? And that number shakes out to 2,150,500.
Wow.
The thing is, these CSU guys came up with similar data that the scale of the sightings is far bigger than anybody could dream.
That's incredible.
That is.
Cheryl, my question, I'm going to change it up a little bit. First, I want to say you're dead on when you get a lot of sightings at these contaminated or destructive places. For the long time, we were looking at a place down in Sterling Forest. Couldn't figure out why we were getting so many sightings there. Yeah.
Tuxedo Junction?
Yeah. But what we eventually found out that Union Carbide built a nuclear reactor there without telling anybody inside the side of a mountain, and it leaked into the reservoir, which I know you know about and stuff. But I tell you, that is spot on. They do look at stuff that we're screwing up, and they, obviously they want to see how bad we're going to go with this thing. Anyways, I want to change it a little bit.
Chris, can you hold that? Can I add one thing to that?
Sure.
When I initially was trained in the Navy, I was trained in nuclear power. I went to nuclear power school.
Mm-hmm.
And people are always asking me when we got the data, they says, well, they got to be hovering over our nuclear power plants. Well, there's 55 operational nuclear power plants in the country. I'm not talking research reactors. I'm talking nuclear power plant. Okay. And I've got the street address and zip code of every single one of them. No, they aren't. But back in the 70s, there was a lot of activity around Indian Point.
Correct.
Up on the Hudson. Well, that is well known in nuclear circles as a rather leaky plant.
Okay. Yeah, they've had problems there.
Yeah,
they've had a lot of sightings there.
And I think these guys realize that as well. So that's the point. Oh, back to your question, please.
Well, my question was for you. Back in the 70s and 80s and stuff, you always heard about the discs and the top hat sightings. What's the most popular kind of craft that's being seen nowadays? What's flying out there? Obviously, they've changed their technology because we're seeing all these different things.
New model year every 7 years. Yeah.
Yeah. What are we seeing now? What's the hottest ticket out there?
Okay. Pure data, light in the sky. Okay, but get below that. The next one up is circle of lights. Okay. And give me 1 second. Okay, I got it right here. This is what I want to see. Circle of lights, cigar shapes. Let's see. Circle of lights. Fireballs. And spheres, and then followed by triangles.
Okay.
Interesting.
Do you think there's any connection between certain shapes and the beings that might be flying these shapes?
Linda made that suggestion back when we were writing the column that, you can tell an Italian car from an English car. And so, and so, yeah, it might be different species. a different interpretation of the same technology.
Right.
Okay. So,
well, oh, sorry, I had one follow up to that real quick. Do you think there are certain shapes that are more likely to just be our own, that we are mistaking for UFOs, but they are probably our government?
light in the sky. Yeah. Everybody who sees an airliner that doesn't, or a satellite, and don't understand it.
How do you account for, the IFOs and the misidentifications and the crackpots and, that you talk about? I mean, because in MUFON, 90% we can identify. So do you take that into all your statistical data?
Yeah. Okay. You should have a chart. Let's see. You should have a chart that says, hang on for 1 second. Okay, you should have a chart there that says UFO 30%. Okay, people come up to me, did you take all the kooks, nuts, and crackpots out? Okay, and they're usually comfortable by taking 30% and saying, okay, 30% is junk. Well, if you talk to Dr. Valet, he'll tell you 80% is noise. MUFON investigators will tell you 70% is noise.
Yeah.
Linda and Cheryl came up with a completely different approach, and we say 68%. So let's say 70% is the noise. Take 30% right off the top and use that for the valid sightings. Okay, it comes out to 50,290. Divide that over 20 years. Instead of 8,500 a year, we're going to have about 2,500 a year. Divide it by 12 months. And what we end up with is 209 a month, basically 210 a month, every month for the 240 months of the 20 years. Now, if all states were equal, all 50 states plus DC was equal, okay, and they're not, it would come down to 4 sightings a month, every month, for the 240 months of the 20 years.
Wow. That's still a lot.
Now, yeah, that's still a huge amount. Now, I get the people that I call them the nightlight crowd. Okay. These are the people that really think, these have got newspaper editors like this. Oh, they can't get here from there. But if they do get here from there, they're very, very rare, Cheryl. Fine. There's another one there that says UFO 1%. Okay, what we did there is we took 99% off the number. And we'll say, let's go as far as to say that 1% equals off-world craft. That would be 1,676 for 20 years, an average of 84 per year, with 7 real-world off-world craft sightings per month, every month for 240 months. Now, I think that's newsworthy. I have sent this meme to editors and news directors all over the United States. Crickets.
Wow.
You told me a few years ago you think they're turning us all into mystics. I thought that was really cool. What did you mean by that?
Okay. I'm getting this. I can't take that completely by myself. Ray Hernandez and I were having a polite argument over banana cream pie at the conference.
My favorite.
And the two of us were sitting in the canteen area having this very, very energetic talk between the two of us. At times it must have sounded like an argument. Okay. And one of the points that we got to was the idea of this elastic reality, and the experiencers, his 3,500, 4,000 experiencers came back and said, as he put it, the agnostics were coming back spiritual. The hellfire and brimstone Bible thumpers were coming back spiritual. Okay. The atheists were coming back spiritual. Okay. So this elasticity was opening up, and I told Ray some of this stuff about they seem to be letting us see them to expand that reality. And he looked at me and says, they got to be trying to turn us all into mystics. Okay. Now, how deep does that go? Well, think about it. Think about the stuff that the CE5 people do. They sit down in a little circle out in a little glade in the country and meditate for 25 or 30 minutes and start projecting out welcome and greetings and all this kind of stuff. And these guys show up.
Yeah.
This is what it is. The communication has to be done at a consciousness level, because every piece of our fiber is connected to every piece of fiber all through the multiverse. We are connected to everything, everywhere, everyone, and includes everybody, everywhere, everywhen. Okay. And that's what people are starting to wake up to. And, this surge of suddenly we have a huge amount of teenagers that are going through gender changes. Okay. Some people are saying, well, they're being led down the wrong path. They're doing it because it's a fad. No one does this. No one goes through what I went through. They have more support than I ever did. And they don't go through this stuff unless you have to. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. Okay? To go through this process and go with everything that comes with it. But suddenly all these kids are doing this. Why? Because deep inside them, they have understood that they are not their body. They have come to understand they are not their sex. They are a unity being, and it doesn't matter what they want to express themselves. And that's why I start hearing some people just say, I'm non-binary. I'm everything. I'm everything.
Yep. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, that was pretty elegant. Yeah. Cheryl, you had me forget about my question.
That's the monk training. Sorry about that.
So, you know what? What's next for Cheryl Costa? Because we talked a lot about what you've done in the past. I want to know because you're my friend, I want to know what Cheryl Costa is going to do in the future. I mean, you've just done incredible work.
Linda and I want to retire. We're both retired from our careers, but we would like to toddle off into the sunset, but we know we're not going to be able to completely do that. All right. We've been feverishly, like I showed you the stuff with the hot spots. That has been a very, very aggressive personal piece of research that I've wanted to do for some time. I instinctively knew there was something there in the data that I had seen hints of, like that thing with Indiana. I knew there were hints there, but I couldn't put myself on a way to present it so I could easily find this stuff. And literally about 3-4 weeks ago, I hit on a way to present the data to myself. It's still manual. Okay. But once I brought the data out and got it into a certain kind of a chart, I was able to look at a county over 20 years and be able to, a county over 20 years, over 365 days for each of those years. Okay. I was able to look at a county in a 7,303 day context. Okay. And once we got it into that viewpoint, we were able to find these 1 day spikes. Okay. I wanted to have that for what we're working on. Okay, what Linda and I are working on right now, and this probably will be our magnum opus, as they say. We're coming out with a 50-state series.
Oh, awesome.
29 shape series. Between both databases, there's like 33 shapes, but if you take out the other a light in the sky, that kind of stuff, take that stuff out and just keep the things that are definable shapes, it comes down to about 29 shapes. Okay, 50 states, and we're going to generate a book. The title, I'll use Ohio for an example, because that's our prototype book over there on the project table. UFOs in Ohio and where to find them. Okay, and we go right down to the county, zip code, and municipal level over 20 years. And what the shape is, not just tell you there was a sighting, we're going to tell you what shapes were displayed in those locations in zip codes. And we will generate the table several different ways, but county only, by zip code only, then by this breakdown of county, zip code, municipality, and the shapes over 20 years. And we've come up with a rapid production process where all the articles and stuff that we're writing in there are stock, and each of them probably need only like 1 page inserted at the end for representing a specific state in that context of whatever that our essay was about. Okay, whether this county or nighttime sightings or something like this, we only have to do that. So all we really have to change are the front cover title pages, put in about 6 or 7 of these one page summaries about a specific state and generate tables that are in the back of the book, much like they had in the pink book, UFO Sightings Desk Reference. We generate just the stuff like I gave Rubio. I generated it by his state, by county, zip code, municipality, and the shapes over 20 years. And we hope to produce. We are hoping once we get rolling to be able to produce maybe one every week or two. It'll probably take about a year and a half to do all these, and then we're going to do all the shapes. At the Pine Bush, you saw I was able to plot a map of where every individual shape was seen over New York State. I've done that for the United States too. Okay. Wow. So we'll be able to show you in the state where they are hanging out and where they're not, but down to the zip code.
That's amazing. Yeah,
there'll be a couple of analysis books in there. I want to write a hotspots analysis book that takes on those 737 one-day hotspots that I discovered. 737.
Yeah.
That's how many you found. I've got a small team of people on Facebook. I went out and said, anybody want to work on a really, really weird book with research book? I want unpaid interns. I will give you certain things. I want you to go out and look a certain thing up on the internet a certain way, and I've already got about 20 people lined up to help. So
sweet. Yeah, that's a lot of work. We have got literally like a minute and a half left, so I just want to leave you with this one question. Do you think that they have been here all along?
They've been with us since before biblical times.
Okay.
Yep.
There's a 40,000-year-old monument on a lake up in northern China that has an individual with something that looks like breathing apparatus on, and that was taken from Air Force 370 physics manual from the late 1960s, early 70s.
Yeah, there you go.
I agree.
Yeah,
all right.
But it can't be the Chinese or Russians, right?
Oh, it's been awesome.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much, Cheryl, for being our guest. This has been amazing. And I'm looking so forward to that new series. Oh my gosh, I'm going to buy them all, every state. Thank you, Chris, Jerry, Jenna. Thank you, Katie Cook. Thank you to our producer, Bill Skywatcher. And Amanda, you rocked it as always. Thank you to our co-producer, Amanda Curran. And everybody have a fantastic rest of your week. Please report those sightings you see to MUFON. I know so many times we overlook doing that, but really get those reports. And thank you to the reptilian guests we had as well. Everybody be nice to each other out there and have a fantastic rest of your week. See you next Tuesday night.
Yep. I'm going to have some dinner. I might be the dinner.
No, Jerry, don't do it.